My name is Estella, and I'm 25 years old. The night everything changed started like a normal birthday dinner, but within minutes it became the moment my entire life cracked open. My parents had insisted on taking me out to celebrate turning 25. That alone felt strange because birthdays in our house were never really important. Growing up, they were quiet events, maybe a cake, maybe a quick happy birthday, and then everyone simply returned to their routines. But this time my parents reserved a table at an upscale restaurant downtown. Candlelight flickered across polished wooden tables. Soft jazz music floated through the air, and the smell of grilled steak and butter filled the room. It felt far more special than anything they had ever done for me before. I walked in thinking maybe they had finally decided to treat me like an adult. Maybe even like family. My mom greeted the hostess with a bright smile that looked slightly forced, while my dad kept glancing around the restaurant, like he was waiting for something important to happen. At first I thought maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe friends were about to appear, or maybe they had some big announcement about their lives. What I didn't realize was that the announcement was actually about mine. We sat down, ordered our meals, and made small talk while the waiter brought drinks. My parents acted strangely calm, almost rehearsed. My dad kept adjusting his napkin while my mom slowly sipped her wine, watching me closely like she was studying my reactions. When the waiter finally brought a small dessert with a candle on it, a few nearby tables clapped politely while I blew out the flame. For a brief moment, I actually felt happy. Turning 25 felt like the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I had a steady job, my own apartment, and plans for the future. I thought this dinner was simply my parents acknowledging that I had grown up. But when the candle smoke faded, the silence at the table became uncomfortable. My dad folded his hands together and leaned forward slightly, the same posture he used when delivering serious news. Then he cleared his throat and said words that instantly shattered the entire evening. He looked directly at me and said, "On my 25th birthday, parents took me to dinner, but only to tell me I was adopted." For a moment I thought he was joking. I even laughed nervously, expecting him or my mom to laugh too, but neither of them did. Their faces stayed serious, almost cold, like they were discussing something completely ordinary. My smile slowly faded as the reality settled in. My heart began pounding in my chest. "Wait, what?" I asked quietly. My mom leaned back in her chair and let out a short laugh, but it wasn't warm. It sounded amused, almost mocking. She tilted her head and said the words that cut deeper than anything else that night. "We only kept you for the tax benefits. Now you're 25. You're useless." The restaurant suddenly felt colder. The sounds around us faded into a dull background noise. I stared at her, trying to understand how someone could say something like that so casually. For 25 years I had believed these two people were my parents. The people who raised me, the people who were supposed to care about me, and now my entire childhood was being reduced to a financial decision. My dad nodded as if confirming a business statement. Then he added calmly, "We've already filed to legally disown you." Those words hung in the air like a final verdict. My mind started racing through memories from my childhood, the distant birthdays, the cold hugs, the way my achievements were always met with indifference instead of pride. For years I told myself I was imagining things, but sitting there now, everything suddenly made sense. For a moment, tears almost came to my eyes, but instead of crying, something strange happened inside me. The shock slowly faded and was replaced by a quiet calm. Because the truth was, this conversation wasn't as shocking to me as they thought. Months earlier, I had started questioning parts of my past. Small details about my birth records never quite matched their stories. That curiosity turned into research. Late nights studying documents, phone calls to hospitals, and eventually a DNA test that changed everything. So instead of arguing or begging, I calmly folded my hands on the table and looked at both of them. I didn't cry, I just said, "Funny you should bring that up, because I found my biological family, in this restaurant right now." And for the first time that night, both of their faces went completely pale. The moment I said those words, the air at the table changed instantly. Just seconds earlier, my parents had been relaxed, almost amused, like they had already finished the conversation and were ready to leave. But now both of them froze. My dad's hand stopped halfway to his glass, and my mom blinked like she hadn't heard me correctly. The silence between us suddenly felt heavier than anything they had said before. My mom recovered first. She leaned back in her chair and gave a small dismissive laugh. "Estella," she said slowly, swirling the wine in her glass, "you shouldn't make up stories like that. It's embarrassing. My dad nodded calmly. We've already told you the truth tonight, he added. There's no need for dramatics. I watched their faces carefully. For 25 years I had tried to understand them, hoping to see even a small sign of love. But now I saw something else, confidence. They believed they were still in control. They thought I was bluffing to protect my pride. But they were wrong. I leaned slightly forward and glanced toward the restaurant entrance. I'm not bluffing, I said calmly. My mom rolled her eyes. Estella, stop this nonsense. Before she could finish, the restaurant door opened. A small group walked inside. I had been watching the time all evening, waiting for exactly that moment. The hostess greeted them and then pointed toward our table. Without thinking, my parents followed her gesture. At first, their expressions showed confusion, but as the group slowly walked closer, that confusion started turning into something else. The woman leading them had deep auburn hair, the exact same shade as mine. Her green eyes looked almost identical to the ones I saw in the mirror every morning. Behind her stood a tall man with calm eyes and sharp cheekbones that looked almost exactly like my own. And beside them was a young man who looked so similar to me that anyone could have guessed we were related. The woman stopped a few steps from the table. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at me. Estella? She asked softly. I stood up from my chair. For a moment, the rest of the restaurant disappeared. The music, the conversations, the clinking glasses, everything faded into the background. All I could see were the three people standing in front of me. I nodded slowly. Hi. The woman covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. The man beside her gently placed a hand on her shoulder, though his own eyes looked emotional too. Behind me, the silence from my adoptive parents had become unbearable. I turned back toward them. My mom's confident smile had vanished. My dad stared at the strangers with a tight expression. What is this? He demanded. The truth, I answered calmly. The auburn-haired woman stepped forward. We've been searching for our daughter for 25 years, she said softly. A hospital paperwork mistake separated us when she was born. We only recently found records that helped us track her down. My adoptive parents sat there speechless. Just minutes earlier, they had acted like they held all the power. Now that control had disappeared. I picked up my purse and looked directly at them. You said you only kept me for the tax benefits, I said calmly. Well, congratulations. Your investment period is officially over. They said nothing. For the first time in my life, they had no words left. I turned away and faced the family I had finally found. My biological mother stepped forward and wrapped me in a tight hug. Unlike the cold embraces I remembered from childhood, this one felt warm and real. My biological father smiled gently. We reserved a table across the room, he said. We were hoping you'd join us. I glanced once more at the table where my old life had ended, then walked with my real family toward a new beginning. My name is Violette, and I'm 28 years old. 3 years ago, my life started falling apart in a way I couldn't understand at first. Every time I thought I was finally moving forward, something invisible would pull the ground out from under me again. It all started the night I left my parents' house for good. Our relationship had never been easy. But that night, the argument turned into something final, cold, sharp, and permanent. I walked out with 2 suitcases and the quiet belief that at least now I could finally build my own life. I had a degree, I had good references, I even had some savings that could support me. For a few months while I searched for work. At first, everything seemed normal. My first interview went great. The manager smiled, shook my hand, and told me they'd call me soon. But they never did. Then the same thing happened with the second interview, and the third, and the fourth. Every place that had seemed excited to hire me suddenly went silent. Weeks turned into months. I kept applying, kept interviewing, kept believing that eventually something would work out. But nothing ever did. Finally, one receptionist I had spoken with before called me back after an interview. Her voice sounded nervous, almost apologetic. She said quietly, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but your parents called here. I froze. Then she continued. They said you had a criminal record. At first I laughed because it sounded ridiculous, but then the weight of her words settled into my chest like a stone. That's when I realized the horrifying truth. For 3 years, parents called every job I applied to, told them I had a criminal record. Every interview, every application, every opportunity. They had been behind all of it, quietly destroying my future. I messaged my father immediately, hoping maybe there had been some misunderstanding. His reply came a few minutes later. It was only one sentence. Dad, text me. Come home and apologize and maybe I'll stop. That was the moment I understood the truth. This wasn't about protecting me. It wasn't about anger. It was about control. My parents wanted me back under their roof, under their rules, and they were willing to sabotage my entire life to make it happen. But I refused. I kept applying for jobs, hoping eventually I could outrun their lies. Instead, things only got worse. In a small town, rumors spread fast. Employers talked to each other. My name slowly became connected with something suspicious, something criminal, something nobody wanted to risk. My savings ran out faster than I expected. Rent turned into late notices. Late notices turned into eviction. And before I could fully process how far everything had fallen, I was standing outside my apartment building with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. I was homeless for 8 months. Those months felt like living inside a slow nightmare. At first, I slept in my car. When I had to sell it just to survive, I slept on buses, in waiting rooms, and sometimes behind a small laundromat that stayed open late enough to feel safe. Every day I kept applying for jobs. Every day I hoped someone would see me as a person instead of a rumor. But every time I got close to being hired, something changed. An interviewer would suddenly grow distant. Or I'd receive another polite email, saying they had decided to move in another direction. I knew exactly what it meant. My parents were still calling. Sometimes late at night my phone would buzz, and it would be another message from my father repeating the same cruel sentence. Come home and apologize, and maybe I'll stop. The worst part wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the cold nights. It was realizing that the people who were supposed to protect me were the ones destroying me. After 8 months, something inside me changed. I stopped expecting help. I stopped believing things would magically improve. I focused on surviving one day at a time. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I was sitting on a bench near the bus station, trying to decide whether to spend my last few dollars on food or a shower at the gym across the street. That's when a woman approached me. She looked professional, maybe in her early 40s, holding a leather folder. She asked my name carefully. When I said Violette, her face softened with relief. She sat beside me and spoke quietly. Then a woman told me, "Your grandma hired me 10 years ago to find you. When things got bad enough, here's what she left you." For a moment I thought I had misheard her. My grandmother had passed away years ago, but she had also been the only person in my family who truly believed in me. The woman handed me the folder. My name was written across it in handwriting I recognized instantly. My grandmother's. My hands were shaking as I opened it, because suddenly it felt like every ruined opportunity, every painful moment, every night I spent homeless, had somehow led to this exact moment. And I had no idea yet that what I found inside would be something nobody in town could believe. When I opened the folder on that bus station bench, the first thing I saw was my grandmother's letter. The moment I recognized her handwriting, my chest tightened. It felt like hearing a voice I thought I had lost forever. I unfolded the paper slowly and began to read. She wrote that she had always worried about the way my parents tried to control my life. She loved them, but she had seen the pressure they put on people instead of supporting them. Then she wrote something that made my hands shake. She said she had prepared something for me, in case the day ever came when I needed a way out. Inside the folder were legal documents, bank papers, property records. My grandmother had created a trust in my name years earlier. Not a small one either. It was enough money to completely change my life. But the biggest surprise was the property documents. She had purchased a commercial building in the center of town years ago and transferred ownership into the trust, and I was the beneficiary. I looked at the woman beside me, stunned. She explained that she was a private investigator. My grandmother had hired 10 years earlier. Her job had been simple: watch from a distance, and step in if my life ever reached a breaking point. Apparently, my grandmother had always believed that one day I might need help escaping my parents' influence. Even after she was gone, she had still found a way to protect me. Within 2 weeks, everything began to change. I used the trust money to rent a small apartment. For the first time in months, I had a real bed again. Soon after, I officially took control of the commercial building. Word traveled quickly through the town. The girl everyone believed had a criminal record was now the owner of one of the most valuable commercial buildings in the area. Then something happened that no one expected. My parents showed up. They walked into the building lobby looking tense and confused. Apparently, they had heard the rumors about the new owner, but they didn't believe them. Not until they saw me standing there. The silence that followed felt heavy. My father looked completely shocked. The daughter he had tried to control by destroying her life was now the owner of the building his own business rented space in. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but no words came out. I remembered every message he had sent me. Every time my phone buzzed with the same sentence: "Come home and apologize, and maybe I'll stop." But this time things were different. I didn't yell. I didn't insult them. I simply said one thing. I survived without you, and I intend to keep living that way. Then I turned and walked back to my office, leaving them standing there in silence. That night I sat by the office window looking at the town that once believed the worst about me, and I thought about my grandmother, the one person who believed in me even when no one else did. Even after she was gone, she still saved me, and if you stayed to hear Violet's story until the end, it truly means a lot. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the people who try to break us only push us toward the life we were meant to build. So if you enjoy powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay with us for the next one.